everybody. The Flash. Sorry I can't go high octave on it, but I'm still trying to get over a cold that I had, which I actually caught the day that I went to go see The Flash, but I got sick earlier in the day, and then I went to the movies anyway, and I was in the theater shivering, but it was worth it to talk about this Flash movie. Oh, and here we go. So as we close a chapter on the DC movie universe with one film to go with Aquaman, because James Gunn is trying to kidnap Blue Beetle. I have to say right out the gate, before I even get started, I did enjoy the movie, and I did like the movie. I do have some thoughts, I do have some things, but they're going to be spoilers out the yin-yang, spoilers out the ass, and if you haven't been spoiled by now, you're about to be spoiled, because it was a wild ride. So, let's just kick it off. So, the movie actually starts. It starts with young Barry Allen, where he's, going to get his morning coffee, because remember, he works at the CC PD crime lab. And they did this whole scene where the person that was supposed to make his sandwich took 50 years to make his sandwich, and then he got a call from Alfred, of all people, returning Alfred from the Batcave. He called Barry and said that they needed help in Gotham. Then Barry was just like, okay, while the guy was, now this is the crazy shit, while the guy was making his sandwich, Barry ran to Gotham City. He went, bumped into Batman. He helped, because Batman was chasing down some criminals that had some chemical virus, whatever. They were going to throw it in Gotham Bay. So Batman was chasing the villains, and then he told Flash, he said, go save the people. Because there was a building that exploded, and the building was going to come crashing down. So Flash goes into the building. He saves as many people as he can, and then he gets all the people to safety. Meanwhile, we get a dope-ass Batman chase scene with the Batmobile, the Bat motorcycle with Bat flag for life, Ben Affleck throwing batarangs, and that shit was dope. I was just like, why are we not getting this? like let's get more of this. So we get a kick-ass Ben Affleck Batman chase scene. Meanwhile, the Flash is saving people from a fallen building. While he's saving all the people from the fallen building, when he thought he had all the people saved, he noticed that there were some babies that were like, I don't know why. Why would the babies be that high up in a damn building? But it was a hospital, I guess, where it was like the incubator baby room or whatever, where they had a whole bunch of babies just like lined up. When the building exploded, all the babies fell out of the top floor, including the nurse, and they all went crashing down. So Barry, who was running on empty at this point because he didn't get his sandwich yet, he stole some candy from a bunch of kids. And then this is actually funny, because there was a moment where when the babies and the nurse was plummeting to their doom, Barry ended up running up towards them. And the consensus is he's going to go save these babies and save this nurse. So when he gets to the babies, we're waiting for him to do the Flash thing where he zips around and catches all the babies one by one. This fool blew right past all the babies and everything, and he went to the vending machine and took every candy bar out of the vending machine just so he can get his energy up. So then once he got his energy up, then he rescued the babies. He put one of them in a microwave, and then he had them all lined up. Like, I felt bad for them damn babies. So he saved the babies, he saved the nurse, and then all is well and everything's happy. So he's on his way to go help Batman, who's still trying to chase down the criminals. Batman stops the criminals. He ends up grabbing the one who has the virus. The two of them ended up falling off the bridge because they were on Gotham Gate Bridge. And then when they were on Gotham Gate Bridge, Batman jumped over the bridge. He grabbed the guy, and then he used his batarang hook thing, to grab onto the bridge. And then while he's holding onto the bridge, the guy, he's holding onto the grappling hook with his left hand. He's got the guy in his right hand, and the guy has the virus. So he's trying to hold on to the guy to make sure the guy doesn't drop the virus. And right before the guy dropped the virus, the lasso of truth showed up, rescued both of them, and then we got the returning Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot. And I got choked up when I saw Wonder Woman, because they did Wonder Woman dirty by not letting her have her third movie. And we saw her in the Shazam Fury of the Gods film, and although I would have liked to have seen her in the action sequence in Shazam Fury of the Gods, it was nice to have her in the movie, just to make sure that the universe is still connected and all these people still talk to each other. So then for her to show up in the Flash movie was equally as dope, and then that's when Barry showed up at the end, and then, Wonder Woman actually saved the day. And then, that's when Wonder Woman said to Batman, she was just like, I'm used to being thanked, when I rescue people and save their lives. And then Batman was like, well, you'll never get a thank you out of me because my enormous ego won't allow me to thank someone for saving my life. And then he realized he had the lasso of truth around his hand, and then he quickly dropped it or whatever. And then that was nice. And then, she was just like, then Wonder Woman was just like, well, call me at the next Justice League meeting. And then she took off. Barry ended up going back to Central City. And then when Barry went back to Central City and went back to the coffee shop where he originally left, as soon as he went back to the coffee shop, the guy had just finished making his sandwich. And I was like, so you gonna tell me that whole action sequence with Batman doing that chase down. First of all, let's talk about the cool special effects of him running from Central City to Gotham City. That was dope. But you're going to tell me, him running from Central City to Gotham City, him saving all those people and all those babies from that fallen building, then running after Batman, who was also involved in the chase scene, having time to talk to Batman and have a conversation with Wonder Woman, and then running back to Central City, he did all that in the amount of time it takes to make a sandwich. I was like, damn. Like, so he gets the sandwich or whatever, and then he goes to work. When he's going to work, like, it's supposed to be the day where his dad is supposed to be arraigned, where he thinks his dad's going to get out of prison. And then while he's in there, that's when the lawyer told him that there's nothing that they can do, because he said that the only footage that they had available of his dad that could clear his dad's name at the time that his mother was murdered, the alibi was that his father wasn't home. He was at the store. They actually found video footage of the father at the store, because there was a moment where we saw a flashback where the mom, she was trying to make spaghetti or pasta or something, and she was out of tomato sauce. She asked the father, Henry, to go get the tomato sauce, so Henry went to the supermarket. When Henry went to the supermarket, he picked up the tomato sauce, he came back home, and then when he got back home, that's when he found his wife dead, and then she had the knife like stuck in her chest or whatever, then she died, and then he called the cops, and then the cops blamed him for it. But Barry knew that his dad actually went to the supermarket. So when they found the footage of his dad at the supermarket, they said that they couldn't use the footage to clear his dad's name because the dad never looked up the entire time and they couldn't see his face, because the cans of tomatoes that he was getting was at a lower shelf, and because he was like leaned forward at a lower shelf, his face was never shown on camera. So that was upsetting. Barry was upset, and then he just he figured that his dad would never get out of prison, and then his dad was just like, forget about me, and he was like, no, you're my father or whatever. And then that's when Barry gets the idea that he can go back in time and he could actually save his mom. He goes and talks to Bruce about it, and he was just like, I could save my parents, I could save your parents. And then Bruce was like, no. He was like, don't do that shit. Because he said that our tragedies are the reason why we are who we are today, and you could seriously alter things for the worse by making those changes. And then Barry was just like, you know what, screw it. He ended up running through time. He ended up running back in time. He was in the time vault thingy. On Grant Gustin Flash, when Flash is in like the space-time continuum, it shows like pictures, like motion pictures, like TV screens, and then he just chooses the screen he goes into. On this one, it's almost like he's in a courtroom or like a coliseum where he just sees people and he can walk up to the person and be a part of that particular moment in time. What he ends up doing, he goes to the supermarket, and because Barry's whole thing was, if his dad never had to go get the tomato sauce, this whole thing never would happen. So and the only reason why his dad had to get the tomato sauce is because his mom forgot it at the supermarket. So Barry goes to the supermarket, he sees himself, like his younger self, and he sees his mom at the supermarket. He takes the tomato sauce and puts the tomato sauce in his mother's cart to make sure she doesn't forget it. When he went back to the space-time continuum to try to go back to his present, another speedster came out of nowhere and punched him in the face and knocked him into the time period where Barry was now 18. So then he couldn't resist. He ends up going to his house at 18 years old, and he sees his mom, and he's like, holy shit, my mom is alive. He hugs his mom, his dad is there, he's talking to his dad, and then while he's having a conversation with his parents, and he's like choked up over the fact that his parents are alive, he sees the 18-year-old version of himself outside, and then he goes to confront him, and that's when he realizes he doesn't have his speed anymore. So he confronts his 18-year-old self, he tells his 18-year-old self everything, like, look, I'm a superhero, I'm from the future, I'm you, you're me, blah, 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 this, that, and the third. He was like, I don't have any superpowers, and then that's when Barry realized, today's the day I was supposed to get struck by lightning, and today's the day that I was supposed to get my superpowers. But because I changed things, and because my parents are alive, I never try to work at a crime lab, and because I never tried to work at the crime lab, I never got struck by lightning. So he ends up taking his 18-year-old self all the way down to the crime lab was where he got shocked. And I do have to say this, one of the things about the film that did annoy me, it wasn't the comedy, because it's Ezra Miller, it's an Ezra Miller Flash film, so you expect comedy. And a lot of it was funny. There was a lot of funny moments, there were a lot of moments that made me bust out laughing, but the comedy where they were trying to prove how annoying Barry is, sometimes those scenes and those jokes just went on too long. Like, there's moments where, like, they're having banter back and forth, they're talking, they're doing this, they're doing that, and then you're laughing, it's funny, you're like, oh, this is awesome, this is dope, and then you're just like, okay, now stop. And they kept going. So there were a lot of good jokes turn forced jokes, like especially with the interactions between Barry and himself. So he has his 18-year-old self get hit by lightning. Now his 18-year-old self has super speed. He still like old Barry still doesn't have super speed, but his 18-year-old self has super speed. While he's trying to teach his younger self, how to use the super speed, his younger self burns his clothes off, does all this crazy shit, cause a 3-pile car accident, and then that's when they see on the television show. They see on the television like one of the things that was changed because Barry said that he wiped away all metahumans. He said because of the changes that he made, like Superman doesn't exist, like Cyborg doesn't exist, Aquaman doesn't exist, like Wonder Woman doesn't exist, but Batman does exist, and General Zod is here on Earth. And General Zod said he's on Earth looking for the Kryptonian. So that's when Barry was like, well, shit, Superman does exist because General Zod's looking for the Kryptonian. So because they're trying to figure all this out and they're trying to stop the General Zod invasion, Barry and young Barry, they end up going down to Wayne Manor to go talk to Batman. And when they get to Batman, it's not Ben Affleck, it's actually Michael Keaton Batman. And that was dope. He looked like Santa Claus when he had like the long gray hair and the beard. And then he was just like, who are you? And he was like, I'm Batman and everything. And then they have the whole conversation. They're just like, oh, we have to find, we have to find the Superman so we can, save the world and stop General Zod. And then Batman decides to suit up one more time and help them save the universe. They go down to the stronghold because Batman used a flip phone to try to figure out where Superman was. They used a flip phone. They found the location, and then they go down to the Arctic or whatever the hell they went to go find Superman. Because again, in the Flashpoint paradox, Superman's pod didn't end up in Kansas. Superman's pod ended up like in Russia or some shit somewhere. And the government basically like kidnapped him and did experiments on him and everything. And because he never got exposed to the sunlight, he was all frail and weak and everything. But, because they weren't going to do that because Henry Cavill wasn't in the movie. They did have a CGI Henry Cavill in the movie, but it wasn't actually Henry Cavill. But then when they get to the stronghold, when both Flashes and Batman get to the stronghold and they bust in and they find Kal-El, we find out that it's not Kal-El, it's actually Kara Zor-El. It's Supergirl. And then she even said, because when he was just like, oh, where's Kal? And then she was like, oh, my cousin Kal. And then that's when Supergirl told the story. She said that when our planet died, my uncle and my aunt, they sent Kal-El in a rocket to Earth, in order to save him. My parents sent me in a rocket behind him. She said I was supposed to protect him. Now, in the traditional lore, both of their pods got sent to Earth, but Kara's got knocked off course and she got stuck in the Phantom Zone. In the Flashpoint now, in this particular movie, because Barry changed things, it was Supergirl's pod that ended up on Earth and Kal-El got stuck in the Phantom Zone. So he's still a baby somewhere floating around in space. And Supergirl doesn't have her power because she said that when she landed, the government chained her up and, locked her up or whatever the case may be. So then after that, they tried to fight to get her outside. They get her outside. The sunlight ends up, soaking through her cells and everything. And then Batman, Supergirl, and the Flash, they all take down the soldiers. They beat up all the soldiers. Then when Supergirl finds out that General Zod is around, she's like, no, we have to do something about it. General Zod shows up and he's just like, oh, I want the Supergirl. And then there's a whole big fight scene happens, and then this is the part where young Barry started going crazy. In the Man of Steel, and this was a cool thing too, because in the original Man of Steel, a lot of people lost their shit and made this whole big thing over the fact that Superman killed General Zod. And they were just like, oh, Superman doesn't kill. That's not what Superman does. He shouldn't have killed General Zod. This movie justified why Superman should have killed General Zod. Because when General Zod showed up, and he fought Kara, and he fought Bruce, and he fought both Barrys, he murdered everybody like 1,700 times. He killed Kara. He killed Bruce, he killed Barry, he killed a whole bunch of different people. And this was the whole thing. The point that they were trying to prove was General Zod is going to win and he's not going to stop until everyone is dead, which is why in Man of Steel, Clark had to snap his neck. But 18-year-old Barry, because everybody was dying, he started freaking out, and then he kept rewinding time, trying to get a do-over, and now we're in Time Machine territory, where, again, and I've brought this up in other reviews before, in the movie Time Machine, this guy, this scientist, genius inventor, he was on a date with his girlfriend, and his girlfriend died. He was so destroyed over losing his girlfriend, he built a time machine, and he tried to go back in time to save his girlfriend. When he saved her, because I think in the first one she got killed in Central Park. So he brings her out of Central Park and makes sure she doesn't get killed. And then when he gets her away from Central Park, he goes to a convenience store to get something to drink, and while he's getting something to drink, she gets hit by a car. Then he ends up going back in time again, he avoids that, and then she dies some other way. He keeps going back in time, and no matter what he keeps doing, his girlfriend keeps dying to the point where, and then somebody had to tell him, he was just like, where there's meant to be death, there's always going to be death. So, and what they call it on Grant Gustin Flash, they call it a fixed point in time. I forgot what they called it in the Flash movie, but basically it's like a crossroads or something. But basically, it's a fixed point in time. And if you watch the Flash, like the last 4 episodes of the Flash TV show, we even find out that Eobard Thawne killing Barry's mother is a fixed point in time. It's something that's always supposed to happen. And the whole thing about without a Superman to do what needs to be done to snap this guy's neck, General Zod will always win, and General Zod winning has now become a fixed point in time. And, young Barry couldn't handle it. And then he kept getting stabbed with different objects and everything, and then he kept going back in time, and he did it so much to the point where our Barry took 18-year-old Barry into the space-time continuum, into like the Coliseum thingy, and he was trying to talk him down, and he was like, look, bro, he said that you can't save him. He said this is a fixed point. He said the only thing that we can do is for me to go back and undo the mess that I did to begin with. And then that's when the speedster from the beginning of the movie that punched him in the face and knocked him into the time that he's in now, that person showed up. Here's where I'm split, because I thought it was, because, all right, so basically what happened was the speedster that knocked Barry into into his 18-year-old self timeline, that was the 18-year-old Barry like 40 years later, who's old as shit, because he spent his entire life going back in time trying to undo the moment of Bruce and Kara dying. And he kept failing, and he kept trying, and he kept trying, and he kept trying. He tried so much to the point where eventually he was going to break time altogether. And then when Barry looked at him, he was just like, dude, he's like, you got to stop. And then he was just like, no, I can do it. I can fix it, whatever. And then that's when he talked to him. He was just like, listen, he said, this is a fixed point. It can't be undone. But then that's when evil Barry told him, he was just like, he said, I'm the one that knocked you into my present so you can put me on the path to come here so I can change, all this stuff. But he was just like, you can't change it because it's a fixed point. So he's just like, no, he's like, I'll change it once I kill you. And then he tries to kill Barry, and then 18-year-old Barry jumps in the way of our Barry. He basically got killed. 18-year-old Barry got killed by the older version of himself. And then after he got killed by the older version of himself, he was just like, go do what needs to be done. And then our Barry. And then at that point, that's when they looked up. And then because 18-year-old Barry, who's now 40, who's now like 68 or whatever, he broke time to the point where all the different universes, the multiverse, started collapsing on each other. And this was a cool moment because we got a look into multiple Earths, multiple parts of movies and television. We ended up seeing the 1950s, 60s Superman, the one that the black and white Superman that my mom used to watch back in the day. We saw the Adam West Batman, on a different Earth. We ended up seeing Christopher Reed and the actress who plays Supergirl, and kudos to her because not only did she play Supergirl in the movies back in like the 90s or the 80s, I think it was the 80s, but not only did she play Supergirl back then, she eventually ended up, I think she played on like Smallville too, but she played Supergirl's mom on the Supergirl TV show. And now she cameos, although CGI, she cameos right next to Christopher Reeves on a different Earth. So that was nice to see. We saw Jay Garrick. We saw Teddy Spears, Jay Garrick. So, I couldn't even believe that was him at first when I saw him. And I was just like, but unfortunately we didn't get a Grant Gustin cameo. And I'd like to think that the reason why we did not get a Grant Gustin cameo is because of all the foolishness Ezra Miller did. He probably didn't want to be associated with that. Or maybe it was just some other things. Maybe they just didn't want him involved. But it was a missed opportunity to not have Grant Gustin somewhere in this film, even if you just took old footage of him running around like they did on Doom Patrol. And then we even got Nicolas Cage Superman. And when I saw Nicolas Cage Superman, I immediately started smiling because Nicolas Cage is my name is Jarrell. And I'm not as obsessed with the Superman lore as Nicolas Cage. Like, Nicolas Cage actually named one of his kids, like, Kal-El. So, and he did shoot, he was supposed to play Superman back in the day. I believe they shot footage from his Superman movie, but it never got greenlit and it never saw the light of day. So they used footage of it with him fighting a giant spider, and they put that footage of it of Nicolas Cage. And I was happy I was legitimately happy for Nicolas Cage because he at least, although he didn't get his movie, he at least got to see himself on the big screen as Superman doing Superman shit. And that was nice. That was very nice to see. Like I said, we got the Jay Garrick and everything. I think, I don't know if I missed anything, let me know in the comment section. But the nostalgia trip was cool. The nostalgia trip was very cool. And then right before all those universes, all those different Earths that we looked into before they all collapsed on each other, that's when Barry went back in time. And then he went to the moment where he saw himself put the tomatoes in his mother's shopping cart, and then he disappears. And then that's when Barry walked up. He talked to his mom. His mom started, she asked him, she was like, "Are you okay?" Because Barry was crying. And then she gave him a hug. And then she was like, "Don't worry, your mother must be very proud of you." And then he was like, "I hope so." And then he froze time for a minute. And then he took the tomatoes out of out of the shopping cart, to put time back on track. Oh, and I also forgot, when Barry had lost his speed, they did do the thing where they tried to like supercharge his speed, and Bruce, the Flash and the Flash they did the experiment to try to get Barry his speed back, and they cooked him. But after they cooked him, like, he did the speed healing and everything, then he went back to normal. That's how he got his speed back. He took the tomatoes out of the shopping cart, he put them back on the shelf, and then he reset time, he put time back to normal, and he fixed the fixed point. But there are small changes that if you watch the Flash TV show, you know this. There are small changes that you can make that won't have an effect on the overall space-time continuum. And then that's when Barry got the idea, because all the tomatoes were on a lower shelf, which is why you never saw his dad's face at the supermarket. Barry switched all the tomatoes on the shelf, and he put all the tomatoes on a high shelf. So then when he goes back to his present, and he's sitting in the courtroom, and they show the footage of where his dad was the night that his mom was killed, they actually show his dad's face, because his dad went to the shelf, he looked up to go reach for the tomatoes on the top shelf. And getting his dad out of prison isn't gonna affect the space-time continuum, because by then Barry has already become the Flash, and everything's already on the course that it's supposed to be. So having his dad in his life is not gonna make a big deal. So that was cool. It even, he got acquitted, and one will assume his dad's gonna get out of prison now, and that's gonna be nice to see. We did get some stuff with Iris, like keep Iris black. Like, Iris was in the film, like the girls still look good. She bumped into Barry at some point during the movie because she was doing the story on his dad's trial. The two of them had a conversation earlier, and then while he was talking to her, that's when he had got the idea to go back in time to save his mom anyway. And then later on in the movie, when his dad got acquitted, the two of them were talking again, because apparently they knew each other in college. And then she told Barry, she was like, "You should ask me out on a date." Barry asked Iris out on a date, and now Barry and Iris West are on the road to becoming a thing, and it's a shame that we're never going to see that blossom. And then finally, at the end of the film, Bruce Wayne called Barry, and he was just like, "Hey, did you see the news? My dad's going to go free." And then he was like, "Yeah, I saw the news. I'm actually pulling up at the courthouse. I'll be there in a second." And then when he pulls up at the courthouse, it wasn't Ben Affleck's Batman that got out of the car. It wasn't Michael Keaton's Batman who got out of the car. It was actually George Clooney's Batman who got out of the car, and I bust out laughing, to the point where when Bruce Wayne George Clooney got out of the car, even Barry was like, "Who the fuck are you?" And like when he said that, I died. And then he was just like, "You know me, Barry. I'm Batman." And then, so that was cool, and that's how the movie ended. And then we got a post-credit scene where Aquaman and Barry were at a bar, and he was talking to him about everything that he's basically talking to Aquaman about the entire Flashpoint. And then Aquaman got drunk, and then he passed out, and he fell in a puddle of water. And then he was like, he's like, "Come on, Arthur, let me help you." And he was like, "Nah, Barry, I'm home," sitting in a puddle of water. And then that was that, and then Barry walked away. That's how the movie ended, and thank you for tuning in. So it was a good film. If you're someone who watched the Flashpoint Paradox movie, if you're someone that read the Flashpoint comics, and you thought you were going to get that, you're a fool. like you fell for it again. If you thought that's what you were going to get, you did it to yourself. The movie wasn't even called Flashpoint. The movie was just called The Flash. And I understand they used Flashpoint, but the movie was called The Flash for a reason, because this was their take on Flashpoint. The same way how on the Grant Gustin TV Flash, it was their version of Flashpoint, not the comic book version of Flashpoint. And I thought it was done well, because they did take some elements from the Flashpoint, with the whole, they swapped out Henry Cavill with Supergirl, but it still worked. A lot of the stuff about the film still worked, and it is sad, because due to the buffoonery of Ezra Miller, we're not going to get a continuation. Like I said, James Gunn's running wild, and this makes me want a Wonder Woman 3 movie, and damn it, I want a Batman film. Like, I was both happy and pissed off at the same time. Now, one thing I will say, because I do have to say something negative, and I have to be fair, because I do say this about Marvel all the time. A lot of people said that the Flash movie was epic. The movie had epic moments. It had epic scenes. The overall film wasn't epic, because the storyline was pretty basic. Me personally, I would have had because the thing with the movie, we never found out who actually killed his mom. It wasn't the Reverse Flash. It wasn't some higher supervillain calling or whatever. They led you to believe that his mom just got killed by some random burglar. And those questions never got answered, and we're not going to get the answer to those questions because the Flash series of films isn't going to continue. But I thought it was a missed opportunity to have the Reverse Flash be the person to kill his mom, and instead of having a young that story made perfect sense. Like, I didn't have a problem with an 18-year-old Barry being so obsessed with not being able to save people, he keeps trying to reverse time and get a do-over to the point where he's now 60 years old. I actually thought that was cool and made perfect sense. But if I had to choose, I would have picked the Reverse Flash instead to be the antagonist in this film, and especially be the person that killed his mom. Because again, we just got left with his mom just being killed by some random dude, and I said I wasn't really too happy about that. So from a storytelling standpoint, and again, and I say this with Marvel all the time, Marvel likes to use epic moments and nostalgia to cover the fact that the storyline isn't good. Though the storyline for the Flash movie was good, the storyline was very good, I do feel that they used the nostalgia of showing all those old Superman characters and all the old Batman characters. They used that nostalgia to kind of like spread some butter over the fact that the storyline wasn't the storyline that a lot of people thought they were going to get. And again, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. When you see the overall nostalgia trip, that whole 5-minute nostalgia sequence, you can be tricked into saying, wow, this movie overall is epic. And no, this scene is epic. This is an epic scene. The movie is good. Like, the movie is great. Like, I'm enjoying the movie. I'm not going to use the epic word on the movie, but the movie is damn good. This scene, though, is epic. That Batman chase scene in the beginning, that shit was epic. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was a lot of there were epic moments, but like I said, but overall, like, I give the movie a 9. I give the movie a 9 overall because it was heartwarming, it was serious, it had comedy, it gave you the nostalgia, and it had a nice happy ending. I'm very like I said, I'm very pleased with it. And it's like I said, it just sucks because when you think about it, it's like the stories. But even if this particular adaptation of the DC universe, the movie universe, was going to continue, we still couldn't get the Flash version of it because we'd have to recast Ezra Miller because you can't let him go to like Honolulu punching old people and then still let him get away with doing this damn movie. So, but that's it. But now we look forward to Aquaman. Aquaman's the next film on the card. And then after that, Blue Beetle, who apparently now was the first film for James Gunn's universe, we'll check out Blue Beetle and see where that goes. And, you know, as we conclude, you know, the Snyderverse version of the DC universe. So share your questions, comments, and or concerns down below. What did you think of the Flash movie? If you saw the Flash movie, share your comments. What were your favorite parts? What were your favorite moments? And if there's anything that I missed, please bring that up in the comment section and we will continue to talk about it. Check me out on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube, always, where you can leave your questions, comments, and or concerns, because we're going over a lot of stuff right now. Video game wise, we're doing video game shit, and I got a whole lot of Street Fighter 6 stuff coming in the pipeline. Like, we're doing, like, Street Fighter 6 is the shit, y'all, and Superman and Lois has returned. We're doing Superman and Lois, and we're also going to do Warrior when Warrior comes back on HBO Max. And then for the love of God, well, Superman and Lois, like, their season finale is next week, so we're definitely going to do the season finale of Superman and Lois. I'm doing Secret Invasion for Marvel as well, and we're going to keep rolling on the superhero goodness until ain't nothing left to talk about. So that was it, guys. So as we conclude this chapter for both TV Flash and movie Flash, take care. I'll see you soon. Gotta go take my medicine, and I'll be back in a minute.